Today's podcast episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. And if you'll go over and check them out, they are the #1 electronic health record system for counselors and therapists. They will provide everything you need to make your practice run smoothly and efficiently. And go check them out, therapynotes.com. And if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get your first 2 months free. therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 133 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer. Glad you've joined me for the podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. Glad you found us. Glad you're here with us. And if you're coming back for more, glad you're back. And as I always like to say, I'm so glad that you're with me on this journey. I hope you're doing well. We're here about halfway through June and still in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know for a lot of folks, your states are starting to open up and people are getting out. And so I know that's just a little bit anxiety producing, if not a lot for some of us. But we're muddling through. And also just as you heard me address in last week's podcast, just all that's going on in our nation and in the world just around this whole racism, the issue of racism. So I talked about that in the last episode, and I'd invite you to go back and listen to that if you feel compelled to. It's a tough and emotional issue for a lot of us. So anyway, it's there for your listening. But in this week's episode, I'm going to change gears and kind of get back to kind of a normal flow of things to some degree. I'm really looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Ed Darrah. And Ed was a person that I met through Facebook, in particular the GSuite for Therapists Facebook group. And Ed was just really kind of one of those rising stars among the group, and just being able to give just a lot of knowledge and insight and information around a lot of the tech kinds of things with using GSuite. And so Ed, I've really enjoyed getting to know Ed, and I'm sure he'll be one of those people you'll hear from again here on the podcast as we talk about GSuite and using those tools. So in this episode, we kind of geek out a little bit and get kind of on the techie side talking about all of these things. So for those of you that might not be familiar with GSuite, GSuite is just simply the paid version, is a paid Google account. And there's a basic version and then a business version. The biggest difference between those two is the amount of storage that you have there. But if you're using a paid account of GSuite, the tools for Google, things like Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Forms, those kinds of tools, if you get the paid version, you can make everything HIPAA secure and HIPAA compliant. And so I really, I'm a big proponent of GSuite in case you don't know. And I put together a course that's still available, GSuite for Therapists. And I'll have links here in the show notes to that particular course. I know there are a lot of people that have signed up for that and enrolled in the course. Had well over 200 people enroll in the course, which is just pretty phenomenal, I think. But anyway, during the month of June, as this episode is coming out, June 2020, I'm going to give another discount on the course. So if you'll use the coupon code just June 2020, you can get 20% off the course through the month of June. In 2020. And if you want to get to the course, just simply go to practiceoftherapy.com/GSuite course. And you can take a look at that. And it's also, you go through the platform that I use, Teachable, you can get up to 30 days just trial of that. When you sign up, and if you're not pleased with the course, you can unsubscribe and get a refund. So it's kind of a no-brainer in that sense, is that you can try the course out and see what you think. So, but anyway, looking forward to you hearing from my guest today, Ed Darrah. And so without further ado, here's my friend Ed Darrah. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so glad to have a new friend on my here on the podcast, Ed Darrah. And Ed and I met in the Facebook group that I started, GSuite for Therapists. And I knew that Ed was just doing a lot of contributing of the content there and just giving a lot of great advice to people. And so I said, okay, I've got to get Ed on the podcast, because and plus he graciously has teamed up with me to do some of the administration of that group. So Ed, welcome to the podcast.
Well, Gordon, thank you so much for having me. And I've been following you for a long time. Your blog posts now within the Facebook group, and to connect today really is special, and the work that you're doing in the field is tremendous. So I appreciate for your time and being on the cast today.
Well, thanks. You're awfully kind to say that. So as I start with most everyone, why don't you tell folks a little bit about your journey into the profession and what you do, and kind of your story.
I'm happy to, and it's a long and windy one, so I'll try to make it quick. And I didn't know what I wanted to do even going into college, except that I love sports. I was a baseball player, basketball player, and I was a caddy in the summer for my summer jobs. But I knew as I entered college, I wanted to work in the sport field, and I wanted to play collegiate baseball. And I was lucky enough to achieve that goal in selecting a school that I had that opportunity. Weeks before I entered my freshman year, I was caddying for a doctor and a lawyer, and they had asked me, Ed, what are you going to do when you go to college? What are you going to study? And I said, I'm not sure. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to take courses. And they said, why don't you be a sports psychologist, a sports psychology professional? Because that's what you've been doing all these years, is helping us perform and helping us through tough moments. And I had never heard of a sports psychologist back then. And I went home and I Googled it, and I said, that's what I want to be. And my path to being a sports psychology professional, a mental health counselor, licensed professional counselor, it's taken many years. And I'm very grateful for those ups and downs, because it's made me who I am today. I went to graduate school at LaSalle University. I have a postmaster's in school counseling. So first, part of my career was as a school counselor. I worked in special education as an instructional aide before that. So I got to work with many different ages, different demographics. And after I achieved my license in 2014, I knew I wanted to be a business owner and to start a practice that focused on mental health and performance for high school athletes. So I established a practice right in the suburbs of Philadelphia. It's called the Main Line in Wynwood. And I started to go to different camps and do free talks on wellness and performance. And I started to really, gain a following, in a sense. I created some social media. You do all those little things, and it's hard to quantify how impactful they are to your practice, but they compound to something much greater. And slowly I started to build a niche as someone that worked with student athletes that were struggling with mental health illness as well. Mm-hmm. And then slowly I started to expand and work with college students and professional athletes. And then in 2018, I had the opportunity to take on a full-time position at Temple University in their athletic department, my dream job.
Yeah, yeah.
So Temple had been very progressive in recognizing that there was a gap in care for student athletes. We have physical therapy, we have team physicians, we have nutritionists, we have strength and conditioning and athletic trainers. But for the longest time, mental health in the field of athletics was not something that was looked at as an essential or critical part of an athlete's development. So Temple, to instill a department specifically for mental health, wellness, and performance, was cutting edge in Philadelphia and on the East Coast. It's been great to see that popping up throughout the region now, that dedicated counselors. So my role right now, or my day-to-day work, is kind of twofold. I work full-time and then I have a private practice that has allowed me to grow as a professional and a business professional as well.
Right. Oh, I love that. How that kind of all came together for you. And it just starting with just somebody planting the seed while you're being a caddy. And I love that. So, yeah. So I know one of the things that we were going to try to tackle today or talk about is just how you're using Google GSuite. So you want to just talk, maybe say a little bit about how you got into using GSuite and what you've kind of learned along the way with that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And I had started my practice and I had met so many people along the way. I had networked and asked people, what are the first things that I need? And GSuite kept on coming up as a potential product or technology. And so is other ERMs and other suites of software. But I started to immerse myself in HIPAA technology early on, and I wanted to see if there was a way to become more efficient as a clinician. After my first 2 years, I felt like I was very manual. I was not maximizing time. I felt like I was also potentially giving up some potential earnings because of the time spent. And I could see, we talk a lot about clinician burnout too. And you could see the path that we can get on if it were very manual and it's taxing. So I started to look at potential ways to streamline my practice. I did have an ERM for a while, and it didn't meet all my needs, and it was very expensive. So I started to look at ways to deploy something that better fit my needs. So GSuite's HIPAA compliant platform was very familiar to me because I use it on the personal side. But to learn about how you can interconnect all the tools to use healthcare within your healthcare facility and to transmit healthcare data, it seemed like a good fit for me. Definitely was a lot of trial and error, as you know, Gordon.
Yeah.
You need to connect the pieces. But once I became familiar with what I wanted to do, it became my primary my EMR. I don't have a secondary one right now, and that's because I spent a lot of time setting it up. And is there a specific area you want me to talk about, Gordon?
So one of the things that I think was, I think maybe it might be helpful, and maybe you and I can kind of do this together to distinguish between, like a dedicated electronic health record system, something like TherapyNotes, or those, and how that might differ from using GSuite. Because the one thing about GSuite that I've learned, and you tell me if you've discovered something different, it's really not set up specifically for healthcare, are using it as a healthcare application, whereas a electronic health record system, might be more specific to that. But that doesn't mean that you can't still use it in certain cases. And you're correct in that there's for some, I think the cost savings of using something like GSuite is very attractive to people because you don't have, you've got very low monthly fees, with the basic or the business GSuite subscription. It's only $6 to $12 per user. So again, that's kind of a no-brainer in my mind, to sign up for that. So anyway, I know that was a long ramble about a question, supposedly in question form, but how was it that you made that? How was it that you kind of figured out that you wanted to move into GSuite? I mean, what was that? How was that done?
So I was looking at my return on investment, ROI, and I was pouring money into an electronic medical record that is well known, but a lot of the features that I was paying for were not being used by my patients. They didn't sign in to the portal that often. They didn't manually schedule appointments. They didn't use the messaging system. And they often chose text message or email as a primary communication, all things that didn't fit into this software. And I said, well, maybe there's a better way. And like you said, it's not a one size fits all. So the biggest difference between an EMR that you pay for monthly is that once you create that account, everything's there for you. Forms are there. The scheduling and billing and the automation is certainly there, especially if you take insurance. I think that's going to be the biggest piece. And I wanted to make sure I made that clear, is that I'm out of pocket, out of network provider. So an EMR will certainly give you an advantage if you're doing insurance claiming.
Right.
Whereas an out-of-pocket provider might find that the features and the customization to the product might not technically meet all your needs, or you might not need everything, so you might be overpaying on your subscription. So in terms of I realized that maybe there's a better way, and with GSuite and some of the third-party add-ons that I have found, you're able to build a robust system. And I'm not going to call it an EMR because it doesn't do everything an EMR does, but it does allow you to run your practice pretty efficiently at a low cost. And that for providers that are working part-time, even providers working full-time, trying to maximize their profits is important.
Yeah. I think that's an excellent point, and that I think, at least in my experience, is that, like you said, if you're an insurance provider, which that's in my practice, we do accept insurance and are on several insurance panels, but that doesn't mean that you give up one for the other. What I've found is that we use it very much in conjunction with each other in terms of the electronic health record system, and then also using GSuite alongside that. So the to me, one of the beauties of GSuite is that it is versatile in that way. So yeah. So well, go ahead.
Like specifically, like the cloud search. Not many EMRs are going to have such a strong cloud search like Google. That's what they specialize in. So if you are putting your documents into your drive, and you can go into a specific folder or patient's folder and narrow down the folder, you can type in medication, and it'll just bring up the notes that have medication in seconds. So in terms of like paper and being able to access data, it makes sense to also try to kind of use both to allow more consistency and streamline that care.
Right. Yeah, and that you're correct, and that the one thing about using like Google Drive is that you do have that search capability
Mm-hmm.
that just makes it so easy to find stuff. And I'm, as I've said many times before, I'm not a naturally organized person. I have to work at it. But that's a great feature there. So, well, if you don't mind, tell folks a little bit about how you've got your tools of GSuite set up. And I know that we had talked before we started recording about an add-on that I'm not that familiar with, but you've made a lot of use of it, and that's JotForm, I believe you said this. Yeah. And so, and then just also we've talked, I know you've used Form Publisher as well, but why don't you tell folks a little bit about that, and what maybe a place for us to start is just maybe for us to define for people what an add-on is, because there might be people that might not know about that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I'm glad that you suggested that. So within GSuite, they have what they call the marketplace. The marketplace offers what we're calling add-ons from companies that have other tools that GSuite might not offer. And they can, the different applications like Google Forms or Google Docs, to allow for different types of customization and accessibility. So we know that Google Forms has an add-on such as Form Publisher that we're familiar with, that allows for documents to be generated into an actual document form. And then manipulated to help create SOAP notes and PHQ-9s and other clinical form-related workflows. What's difficult about the add-ons is that different add-ons request different information from you. So if they're not a HIPAA-compliant application, you're subject to PHI laws, and that could be a breach. So it's very delicate, and you have to make sure that the companies that you're integrating with your GSuite account are compliant. And that's why you go on their sites and you look at their private policies if they offer a BBA agreement, and then make an informed decision. What's great is our Facebook group is a wealth of information. It's a library of information, and people will give you feedback. And I think that's the best step right now, is making sure that you confirm with your colleagues that this is something that is, one, compliant, and two, is worth maybe a couple extra dollars.
Right. Yeah, because it's with some of the add-ons, I know, like with Form Publisher, and folks that have been listening to me for a while know that I recently changed the system. I went through this long process, Ed, of really kind of putting together the what I call the session note helper system, where I've created a template of a Google form that can be used for session notes or progress notes, and then uses the Form Publisher application, add-on rather, to create a Google Doc narrative that I've set up as a template as well. And it works pretty well. It might not be for everybody, but one of the things that I ran into early on is that the Form Publisher add-on, unbeknownst to me, was not covered under the Google BAA. And so I had to switch gears because I felt like it was secure, but we weren't meeting HIPAA compliance by using it early on. But now, long story short, they do provide a BAA, and it has really created a wonderful tool to use in customizing a lot of forms to get those, those kind of hard documents that you need at the end. But Form Publisher, as you probably know, the free version only allows for 20 uses per month. And so you do have to get the premium version, but it's a good, again, like talking about ROI, I think it's only like $78, $79 a month to get the premium version with unlimited use of it. So that's, to me, again, a no-brainer. But anyway, I got a sidetrack. Sorry about that, Ed. So you're using,
That's all right.
you're using Form Publisher, but also you're using JotForms. So talk about that some.
Sure, yeah. And JotForms is just an alternate solution to Google Forms, but there are advantages to JotForm. You are able to take a natural e-signature right on the form, which makes a document legalized. You could also capture IP addresses, create form IDs and submission IDs. You can take payments through JotForm, so you can create a receipt or an invoice and send it out. There's a little more customization. There's a little more opportunity to make it more branded. And I guess there's a little, what do they call that? You can make conditions. There's more advanced conditions to questions that I've seen. They do have very streamlined integration to Google Drive, into Google Sheets. It generates a PDF. It doesn't generate a Google form. So when you fill out this, it will generate it into a specific folder. So what I've done is actually worked with a developer who does Google Scripts, and he has been able to help me map documents that are generated from JotForm into a patient's folder, depending on what the patient's name. So there's no manual drop in, there's no deleting the extra folder. It's taken time to do that, but it's been a great addition to my workflow. It cuts down on error and time.
Yeah.
So we've done that. JotForm and Google Forms are both part of my practice and everyday work. It just depends on what your needs are. I do my billing, actually, like my billing forms, my super bills and statements through Google Forms, because it can generate it into a Google Sheet and then generate a more standardized, looking receipt versus JotForm. But all those things were trial and error, and they're all need-based depending on what you are looking for. JotForm right now is offering their platform free for HIPAA compliance until August 1st. They did that back in March.
Okay.
The other unique thing is they offer Zoom add-on. They offer Box and Dropbox add-on. So if you have different tools, it's allowing you to integrate more efficiently for if you're generating clinical forms.
Yeah. I'm definitely going to check that out because that's something, as I said a minute ago, it's something I'm just now really kind of learning about. And I think as folks that listen to the podcast know, I'm not tied to any one resource as being better than the others. And I think you have to figure out what's going to work best for you and your practice. So, yeah, one of the things you mentioned, Ed, was using an app script. And for folks that aren't familiar with that, as I like to say, I'm more of a tech maven than a tech expert in terms of enjoy learning about new stuff. But app scripts are what work in the background within a Google, particularly like a Google form or a Google sheet, that just kind of automate processes. And most of the add-ons are really, if you get an add-on for Google form or a Google Sheet or whatever, it's an app script that works in the background, make everything kind of work together and automate things. So how did you go? And that's what I used with the 2.5 version of Session Note Helper, is that I hired an app developer to create the app script so that it resided within the Google form rather than as a third-party application. So, yeah. So how have you learned about those different things?
Yeah, and I'm like you. I'm not full tech expert. I like to think that I can think of the workflows, but sometimes I can't actually like initiate them without some support. So what I did was I researched Google Scripts professionals on Fiverr. And I looked at their profiles to see if they worked with healthcare data. And I did some back and forth with them, and I found somebody that felt pretty confident they could do it quickly and compliantly, and they were able to develop that in a day or two. You had to pay for it, but it's worth it. The price because of how efficient it is. Google Scripts is a powerful tool. It might be the most powerful tool that you don't see within the GSuite subscription. And unfortunately, not a lot of us, well, therapists, I don't know, that know how to do coding, and we might not be using it to the best of our ability. And it might be worth looking at how you can integrate that into your practice. So like Gordon said, you run some sort of task, and then it's triggered by the task, and then it creates another thing. So it's like if then that. But it is a powerful tool that could create more streamlined workflows. Right.
Yeah, and that's I did something very similar, and I used a platform called Upwork to find an app developer that could do the app script for me. And those are, again, as people have heard from me in previous episodes, of knowing when to outsource. And that was definitely something I needed to outsource, because I could have maybe spent hours and hours trying to learn how to write code, but it would have been a great use of my time. So definitely that. So if you don't mind, Ed, if you're tell folks maybe a little bit about your workflow and how you're using the different tools within your practice.
Sure. So in terms of fax, I use SR fax, which is a HIPAA compliant digital fax machine. Let's call it that. You get a number, they sign a BBA, the company. But what's really unique about it is that your fax come into your Gmail, just like a regular email. You could also send faxes from your email account as well, from your inbox. So right now, while being remote, I haven't been to my office since March 12th.
Wow.
And if I didn't have that, I would have to go back and forth. And I've sent out a number of faxes, believe it or not, over the past 3 months. And it's been a really good addition at low cost. And I really recommend looking at that company. I also use Paulbox. I don't know if you're familiar with Paulbox. They're a third-party add-on that, again, offer healthcare solutions and a BBA. That's a business associates agreement. And you're able to put that inside your admin controls and it encrypts your emails. So it makes your emails from Gmail HIPAA compliant.
Yeah. And so we'll try to definitely have links to those in the show notes and the show summary. So So that makes my communication with my patients a lot easier, that I can just send PHI through email, but it's encrypted. It's all my emails are an audit log. I'm made aware if one wasn't made encrypted, but that hasn't happened in the 2 years I've used it. So that's Gmail. I figured maybe we'll just go application by application. Sure.
And so in Google, I use Google Drive. Aside from the app script that I had mentioned earlier, I have a number of folders. There's not a specific add-on that I use right now within Drive, except that I really recommend using Google Cloud, which is often overlooked. It's a part of the business plan, but it allows you to do a full cloud search. So you can look up emails, Drive files, Google Keep Notes, if you have websites. So I recommend using Google Cloud. And that's a big part of my workflow, and I actually have that up all the time because it tells you, it uses AI, artificial intelligence, to predict potential documents that you need, and it highlights upcoming appointments with the link to your telehealth session.
Yeah.
So I do use Google Meet as my telehealth client, and it integrates into my Google Calendar. So all my appointments are done through Google Calendar. So those things are pretty well connected and easy to use. Google Meet, people speak highly of it. I like the chat. Obviously, there's some limitations to it. If somebody's trying to use the app on their phone, and they don't have a Google account, they wouldn't be able to use it. So there's just things to keep in mind. Having a backup telehealth service sometimes people use in case people can't access the platform. So those are the ways I use. My Google Calendar is my to-do list. I use. I don't have a separate application except that I use Google Tasks right into my calendar, and it allows me to just look at one thing and I know exactly what I have to do every day. In terms of Google Sheets, I use that as a chart for some people. I usually do my administrative notes in there. I have a template, and I also use it as a big case management and contacts. I did want to ask you, Gordon, and maybe you can navigate this with me. Google Contacts does not fall under GSuite's BBA agreement, but Google Voice does. And Google Voice uses Google Contacts as its directory. So many therapists are confused, and I understand because there isn't a lot of transparency about why this is happening. But I wanted to make sure we brought that up to make people aware is that you shouldn't be keeping any contact or PHI in Google Contacts. So I use my Google Sheet. I have a master client contact, and I have patient, parent, maybe outside provider.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm not sure I know it's the exact solution to that, but I like the idea of just keeping a separate Google Sheet with all of that information there. Again, that's one of the things that maybe where an electronic health record system does better, and that you've got all that more. It's stored in a way that's a little easier to access. But you make a good point, and I think that's something we just have to be careful about, and when using G Suite. So if I come across a solution on that, I'll let you know. But that is a really good point.
Yeah, and going back to Google Voice, another part that clinicians should be aware of, even though the Google Voice falls under G Suite's BBA agreement, it only protects the data at rest, meaning anything that comes out of your domain is not going to be technically compliant by the implementation guide. So I recommend not sending text messages with your Google Voice. You can leave, make phone calls and leave very generic voicemails. But what came about and what is a solution right now is that Google just is transferring everyone over from Google Hangouts chat to Google Chat, which is a platform that does fall under the BBA, and you can send secure messaging. So I've been in the process of introducing this to my patients as a platform for them to email from. And it makes it easy because if they're in their Gmail, they can send it, or they can do it by phone. But it's still relatively new, and it's hard sometimes to transition patients to platform to platform.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, this is great stuff. And so you're using Google Cloud and for the storage of most everything, it sounds like, or the Google Drive in terms of file folders and that sort of thing. And you're right. It just makes it so easy. And it sounds like you've gone pretty fully paperless to some degree.
Yeah, you know what? I had done that in 2017. After about a year and a half of my practice, I decided that I would go paperless, but I had to then go scan everything back. So a scan snap was a must, a scan snap, and I put everything in, and I created patient charts in Google Drive, and I slowly built out each system. And one thing that has been helpful for me too is I created a Google site that serves as my patient portal, which patients can go on and they can do some scheduling. They can fill out forms if they need to update their contact information, payment information. And that's been a great addition too, because that is serving as a piece to something that I was paying for that people weren't really using. So for those that do use it, it's there, but it doesn't come at any additional cost, and it's very user friendly. Right.
Yeah. Oh boy, there's just so much we could talk about how just all the different ways that you're integrating this, and that was really the reason that I set up the GSuite for Therapists group in Facebook, and I think one of the things that I'm seeing is this all these great questions about this stuff, and so I would invite folks that are listening to maybe take a look at that if they're interested in learning more about how to use and integrate a lot of the different things. So, yeah. So Ed, I want to be respectful of your time and I'm so glad we connected, and just to be able to talk about these things. As I've said to folks before, I get to kind of geek out on this stuff a little bit by talking about it. So tell folks a little bit more about how they can get in touch with you and, your website and all of that sort of thing.
Sure. My website is darrahcounseling.com, and I also have a second website at athletewellness.org. I can be found on Twitter at athletewellness. My email is my first name, Edward, and then last name, Darrah, counseling.com. But you could also find me on the Facebook group. I have my own Facebook page as well for my business. But I try to I'm trying to get on Instagram a little bit, but I find that sometimes hard as a therapist. But I'm also going to be making a Google Plus group for people that want to interact with me, and you can find my profile on there. So I'm accessible if anybody has any specific questions about some of the things I mentioned. I think we could have a part 2 at some point, Gordon, because I still have a few things. Yeah, I'm sure we can, and we might. Well, we probably do that here soon, I would say. I saw an email when you mentioned Google Plus. I got an email today. I was going to look here real quick that they're transitioning that to another platform now, and I can't remember the name of it. I just Current. I believe it's like Current. Current. Yes. That's it. So so that's and that quite frankly, that's been one resource or one tool within GSuite that I've not really tapped into yet. So be interested to see how all that goes. So, but Ed, are there any parting thoughts that you have before we kind of end our conversation? And just going back to something you previously were mentioning, the Facebook group and the questions. When you get so many well-educated and passionate providers, clinicians, helping professionals, great things happen. We push each other. We investigate. We ask really important questions, and we do some discovery work and quite frankly, make innovation. So the Facebook group, in my short time there or so, has been tremendously helpful for me. And I look forward to continuing to learn from my peers and yourself. And I think it's an important place to go with questions about making some important technology decisions as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just, I've been amazed at the growth of that group. And it's really coincided, interestingly enough, with the whole COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, it's kind of like it started just kind of, it didn't have much traction at all. But as I said in an earlier podcast episode, I think the Facebook algorithms, gods or whatever, have picked up on it, are really getting it out there to people. So invite you to come join the group. So, well, Ed, thanks again for being on the podcast. And I'm sure we will have a part 2 here soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time, Gordon. It was a really nice pleasure to meet you in person and to connect with you today.
Yeah, same here. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed listening in to my conversation with Ed. As you can tell, we really kind of geeked out on this stuff. And, I think one of the things about us that I like about Ed is that he's gotten real creative with his way of approaching his private practice and setting things up on the office side and the platform side of really automating things using the tools of Google GSuite, and also introducing me to something that I'm going to delve into maybe a little more, and that is a tool called JotForm. And so we'll have, again, links to all of that here in the show notes, and also to Ed's page. And I would invite you to maybe join us on the Facebook group. We're now close to 700 members strong in that group, and a lot of great questions being asked, and people just learning a lot from each other about how they're using the tools of Google GSuite. So be sure and check that out. And again, we'll have links here in the show notes to that particular Facebook group. It'll ask you some questions when you go to join it. Be sure and answer all the questions, and that should get you into the group. So be sure and check that out as well. So again, thanks to our sponsor for the podcast, and that is TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. They're the #1 electronic health record system for mental health providers, and they're who I use in my practice in conjunction with GSuite. But you can go check them out at therapynotes.com. And if you'll use the coupon code, just simply Gordon, Gordon, you can get 2 months of their services at no charge. So it's a good time to check them out. They're really that. TherapyNotes and GSuite are the hub of my practice. So be sure and check them out. Also, thanks for joining me. And if you want to get the GSuite course, now's a good time to get it and get 20% off. So use the coupon code June 2020, and when you go to checkout, and you can get to that course by going to practiceoftherapy.com/GSuite course. And that'll get you there to where you can enroll. So thanks again, folks, for joining me. I hope that you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. Hope you're staying healthy. And we'll join, I'll be here again next week on the Practice of Therapy podcast. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.